This is my submission for Deboss Garage's International Car Show. It's my 1977 Chevrolet Malibu Classic. I've owned this car since 2004, and I bought it without knowing anything about it other than it had been owned by my former teacher from high school who owned it when he was in college. He drove it around for years when he was young, and then he got married and had kids and couldn't tote them around anymore, so it sat in his backyard for several years. I believe he said 7 years, and at that point I just happened to be at his house and saw it behind a tree in his backyard and said, "Hey, can I buy that car off you?" And he said, "You know what, you give me $100 and you can have it." And I couldn't believe it, and I couldn't get the $100 fast enough, and I bought this car before Roadkill, before Motor Trend and everything, and have always been in a position where it was either you had enough money and you didn't have time, or you had enough time and you didn't have money. So over the years I've replaced several things. I've replaced both doors, and I got the mirrors too. I went to Rochester, New York, about a 7-hour drive, 6-hour drive each way to replace the doors. I replaced the trunk lid. I've replaced the bench seat. I found it at a pull apart, which I was lucky to do. This is actually a 1974 seat. It has a plug underneath that I didn't know what it went to. But the only modifications that I've done to the motor in 17 years of owning this car aren't even modifications. All I've done is replace a water pump and rebuild the carburetor. The rest of this looks exactly like it did when I bought it 17 years ago. It's not going to win any beauty pageants. I've had this car all over the state of Ohio, and it continues to do what it was built to do. It didn't have foot ornament for years, and I found this one on Facebook from a guy in a group that I'm in, and I paid $75 for just that foot ornament. But she's a runner, and I couldn't be more happy with it. And I didn't want to tear up the dash by cutting a hole in here, so I just mounted this stereo underneath with zip ties, holding this little radio up, and it's just a head unit that has Bluetooth. The dash pad needs replaced, but it runs and drives and stops and steers everything you could want. I have no lower door panels. They're actually in the house. They need refiberglassed and cleaned and all that good stuff. I've had a lot of people tell me that this car reminds them of one that their parents owned or they owned years ago. I took it up to Norwalk, Ohio 2 years ago for Power Tour. I got my Roadkill sticker. I'm a part of the Go Drive It community. Tony Angelo, local car group here. And this sticker was actually mounted on this car when I bought it 17 years ago, and it's still here. But there she is. I couldn't tell you how many miles are on it, at least 150,000. But she runs and drives and does everything I ask it to. Thanks for your consideration.